just what are your plans for the off season and possibly playing or just doing individual workouts?
Yeah, I mean, probably take a little bit of a break here, just for maybe a week. I don't really want to lose kind of the stuff I've worked on, and just trying to get my body back to full health. There's some
Everything was lined up perfectly for the WNBA's ultimate victory lap. After nearly 3 decades of operating deep in the red, subsidized by the NBA, and desperately fighting for mere scraps of media attention, the league finally hit the jackpot it had been chasing. A massive media rights deal was signed. Arenas sold out night after night. Merchandise flew off shelves faster than it could be restocked. The league had finally discovered the one crucial element missing for 28 long years, a transcendental superstar who crossed over into mainstream culture. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring fans to the game, she brought an entire economic ecosystem. But right when players should have been uniting strategically to secure generational wealth, something ugly began rotting from the inside. Instead of rolling out the red carpet for their golden goose, a bitter faction within the league decided to cook it. We are witnessing one of the most baffling acts of self-sabotage in modern sports history. The WNBA Players Association has opted out of their collective bargaining agreement 2 years early, hoping to negotiate massive pay raises. But simultaneously, a loud, bitter group of veterans seems determined to bully, batter, and alienate the very player who made those pay raises financially possible. This is a war between the past and the future, and if the jealous faction isn't careful, they're going to obliterate the negotiation leverage they desperately need. To understand why this is such a catastrophe, we must examine the cold, hard numbers. Money doesn't care about hurt feelings, and it definitely doesn't care about seniority. What do the numbers reveal about this disaster? Before Caitlin Clark was drafted, the WNBA was a niche product. That's not an insult, it's a brutal financial fact. The league was hemorrhaging an estimated $10 to $50 million annually. Then the Clark effect detonated like a bomb. We're talking about a viewership increase exceeding 170% on ESPN alone. The Indiana Fever, a franchise that previously struggled to fill seats, suddenly led the entire league in attendance, drawing more fans on the road than home teams had seen in years. This wasn't just a bump in interest, it was an economic explosion. This massive influx of cash and attention gave the Players Association the confidence to opt out of the CBA 2 full years early. They looked at the revenue streams and declared, "We want our fair share," and they're absolutely right to demand it. The players deserve better travel conditions, higher salaries, and improved benefits. But here's where the sabotage kicks in with devastating consequences. Negotiations are fundamentally based on leverage. You need to prove to investors and owners that your product is stable, growing, and professional. But what have the owners witnessed instead? A coordinated effort by certain players to physically intimidate and publicly demean the league's biggest financial asset. How did this toxic culture develop? It started with dismissive comments. Legends of the game people who should be mentoring the next generation went on podcasts and systematically minimized Clark's historic achievements. They claimed she wouldn't handle the physicality. They claimed her records weren't genuinely impressive. When that narrative failed to stop the train, the aggression escalated to the court. We all witnessed the hip checks. We saw the blindside hits that had absolutely nothing to do with competitive basketball. To casual viewers, the millions of new fans tuning in for the first time, it didn't look like competitive fire or playoff intensity. It looked like targeted bullying. It looked like a bitter group of people furious that the new girl was receiving all the attention they felt they deserved. This toxic perception is absolute poison for business. When a league appears to be eating its own young, advertisers get nervous and sponsors reconsider partnerships. Brands like Nike and Gatorade are pouring millions into Clark because she represents excellence and genuine excitement. They have zero interest in associating with a league that looks petty, vindictive, and unprofessional. Every time a veteran player takes a cheap shot at Clark, whether it's a physical foul or shady social media post, they're chipping away at the professional image of the entire WNBA, effectively broadcasting to the world, "We are not ready for the big time." But was everyone in the league participating in this sabotage? That wasn't the complete story. While the haters were busy trying to humble the rookie, another faction of players began to emerge, the ones who actually understand the assignment. Enter Sophie Cunningham. The Phoenix Mercury guard has become an unlikely but absolutely crucial figure in this narrative. Cunningham isn't Caitlin Clark. She doesn't have the same historic records or the same massive global following, but she possesses something the jealous veterans critically lack: business savvy. Sophie Cunningham represents the new guard perfectly. She understands that in 2024, a professional athlete is also a content creator and brand builder. She embraces the tunnel walks, transforming her pre-game arrivals into fashion shows that go viral across social media platforms. She genuinely engages with fans, plays with a visible smile, and understands that entertainment value is what actually pays everyone's bills. You don't see Cunningham going on podcasts complaining bitterly that the media talks about Clark too much. Instead, she strategically rides the wave. She knows that more eyes on Clark means more eyes on Phoenix, which means more eyes on Sophie Cunningham. This is the fundamental split tearing through the WNBA right now. On one side, you have the Sophie Cunninghams and the Caitlin Clark's players who realize that a rising tide lifts all boats. They're ready to capitalize on this historic moment to build generational wealth. On the other side lurks the old guard players, who seem stuck in a destructive mindset of scarcity. But where did this scarcity mindset lead them? The old guard consists of players used to fighting for crumbs. So when a whole loaf of bread finally appears, their instinct isn't to share it strategically, it's to fight over who deserves it more, based on seniority. This scarcity mindset led directly to the biggest fumble of the year, the Olympic roster decision. Leaving Caitlin Clark off the Team USA squad for the Paris Olympics was a decision that will be studied in marketing classes for years as a textbook example of what not to do. The selection committee, comprised entirely of WNBA insiders, argued that Clark hadn't paid her dues, and that the roster was based purely on merit and experience. In a vacuum, maybe that argument holds water. But the Olympics isn't played in a vacuum, it's played on a massive global stage. By leaving Clark at home, the WNBA effectively told millions of potential global viewers, "We don't want you to watch." They chose internal politics over global expansion. They prioritized the hurt feelings of veterans who felt they deserved a spot over the long-term financial health of the sport. It was a move driven by the same jealous undercurrent that fuels the hard fouls. They desperately wanted to prove that the league was more than just Caitlin Clark. Well, they proved it. And the ratings for the Olympic basketball games, while decent, were a fraction of what they could have been with Clark. That's money left on the table. Money that could have gone directly into players' pockets in this upcoming CBA negotiation. But how exactly does this sabotage damage their negotiating position? Now, let's examine the specific mechanics of this sabotage. The Players Association is demanding a completely new economic model. They want a revenue split similar to what NBA players have. Currently, WNBA players only share in revenue if the league hits certain aggressive targets they rarely achieve. They want a guaranteed 50-50th split of all income. This sounds fair on paper, but for a 50-50th split to work sustainably, the income needs to keep growing exponentially. The owners aren't stupid. They know this growth is fragile and almost entirely dependent on the Clark boom continuing. If Caitlin Clark were to get seriously injured, perhaps from one of these jealous hard fouls, or if she were to retire early because the environment is too toxic, that revenue evaporates overnight. TV ratings drop, ticket sales plummet, and that $2.2 billion media deal suddenly looks shaky and unsustainable. By targeting Clark, the players are dramatically increasing the risk for owners. And when risk increases, contract offers decrease. The owners will be extremely hesitant to guarantee millions in salaries if they feel the players are actively trying to destroy their own product. There's also the critical issue of the equity trap. A major talking point from the jealous faction is fairness. They argue, "I've been in this league for 10 years. Why does the rookie get private jet treatment? Why does media only talk about her?" This represents a fundamental misunderstanding of the entertainment business. In the NBA, LeBron James gets more attention than a bin. That isn't unfair, it's reality based on value. Veterans demanding equal attention without generating equal revenue come off as delusional to the business world. Sophie Cunningham exposes this delusion perfectly. She didn't demand attention, she commanded it by building a brand. She understood that if you want the camera, you have to give the camera something compelling to look at. She creates viral moments. The bitter players, on the other hand, are demanding attention simply because they exist. They feel owed, and that entitlement is absolutely toxic during high-stakes negotiations. You can't negotiate from a place of entitlement, you must negotiate from a place of demonstrated value. Will the WNBA learn this lesson before it's too late?